Hey, what's up, everybody? AJ here with Launchpad, and I've got another video this week in workforce development. I know it's been a little while, but this topic is a really important topic that I want to talk to you guys about, which is sector strategies. And if you're from the business side, if you're an employer, you may not understand sector strategies. You may not get the concept, but for workforce development and community colleges, you guys understand sector strategies. And right now, sector strategies are very important, and I think very relevant to the times, right? Because we're seeing the business community and employment and job growth is accelerating rapidly. We're seeing businesses in a lot of different sectors: IT, healthcare, construction, manufacturing. All of these sectors are now starting to take off. And what we're realizing is that the job gap, the skills gap, is getting deeper and wider. And there's a lot of reasons to that. I'm not going to cover them all in this video, but in the other videos in this series, we're going to cover that. But today I want to talk about this blog post that I put up, which is why you need to stop doing advisory meetings. And I know a lot of you are going to be like, AJ, what the heck are you talking about? Why should I stop doing advisory meetings? But this cuts to the core of the biggest frustration that employers have about workforce development, okay, is these advisory meetings. I talk to employers, or I talk to sector intermediaries or workforce professionals who have surveyed employers, right? They've talked to employers, and employers all the time, the number one complaint they have is that they get invited to these advisory meetings, and oftentimes they have to sit there for an hour to 2 hours. Yeah, you buy them lunch, you give them a sandwich, right? Those cold cut sandwiches, maybe the little dish of fruit, they get some coffee. But employers are busy. They don't have time for these meetings. They don't have time to take away from their busy day to go to these meetings. And more importantly, if you do invite them to these meetings, oftentimes they don't have any tangible outcomes. Right now, employers, all they care about is getting qualified people into their jobs. That's it. And if you're holding an advisory meeting and you're not getting people into that job, basically it's a waste of time for the employer, and they're getting it frustrated. So I wanted to talk through this. A couple of things. One, why do we even do these meetings in the first place? Why do we hold these? Well, I think there's a mindset from the public sector, from government, from nonprofits, and I think a lot of it is driven down by these grants and the funding from whether it's the federal or state level that says, we want you to reach out to employers. We want you to engage employers. But the only way that they know that you've actually outreached to the employers is if you have some type of advisory meeting, right? You get the input from employers. But I think this is a misguided attempt in trying to really do employer outreach. Instead of saying we want to get your advice, it really should be we want to fill your jobs. We want to get placements. Sector strategies should be measured. Number one most important thing, guys, they should be measured by how many people get placed in a job, right? How many employers were able to hire people in the community? How many people who didn't have those skills were able to get quickly trained in a short-term training and get into those jobs? So oftentimes, these government nonprofit agencies, you guys are checking a box, and I don't think that that's the right mindset when you're working with employers. You shouldn't be using employers to check a box. You really should be using employers to get information about what do they need to hire, how quickly can they train on that, and get those people back out to into those jobs. I think the other challenge is that oftentimes you go to these meetings, and I've been to these meetings where, it's a one-way conversation. The workforce agency or whoever's giving the presentation, they've got their PowerPoint slides, right? It's death by PowerPoint. And, you're going through the slides, and the employer is basically the audience. They're not there to actually give information. They're there to listen to you give a presentation. That's the wrong way to do it. If you do that, all you're doing is reinforcing that negative stereotype that employers have. So the other third frustration that I think employers have is lack of tangible results, right? We're not measuring sector strategies by the number of placements or the number of people that got trained so much as we're measuring it on these kind of intangible, esoteric types of things. Like, did we get their input? Did we get their, the sector's input into our big plan? But it really should be measured, as I mentioned earlier, by how many people get into a job. You really need to ask an employer, how would you define success? And I guarantee you, if you ask 10 CEOs, what do you think how would you measure success by this effort? She or he is going to tell you, how many people did I hire? How many people did my competitor hire? How many people did we add to this industry with these skill sets? That is the most important outcome, and that's the tangible result that all workforce sector strategies should be focused on. So what is the best way to engage an employer? You know, when I did sector strategies and we were doing some consulting work and working here in LA County, the first thing I did before I even reached out to employers is I researched to try to understand. You'll be surprised how much information you can actually get about that sector, you know, and about their hiring needs without even talking to an employer first. You should be doing, don't come to the door of the employer with, hey, we want to bring you to this, you know, advisory meeting and get this information. You should show up at their door already knowing about their business, because all that information is available. All that information is online. You need to know about their business before you approach them. So I would oftentimes do this research, and as a recruiter, when I was in recruiting and staffing, I would do all this research to understand. I'd read job descriptions, job postings, employer websites. What are you looking for to hire? What are the skills? You can capture all that online, and you can use tools like, you know, labor market tools like EMSI to see what are the critical skills that they want for those jobs. The next thing, I think the most important thing, is get rid of the advisory meetings and do one-on-one customer discovery. All right. Customer discovery is sitting down, meeting with employers in that industry, in that sector, and asking the hiring managers, asking the HR executives, asking the CEOs, what are your challenges? And on our blog post, I list a couple of those questions. But you should be meeting one-on-one to capture that information, because then you're not setting the expectations too high. You're not over-promising. You're saying, hey, I want to gather this information from you. I want to understand what your needs are, and then I may come back to you. But don't over-promise. Don't go and say, hey, we've got this huge sector initiative. We just got $5 million in funding, and we're going to completely change the world. You know, you're way over promising, and we know at the reality is most of the workforce agencies were under-delivering for employers. So that's the way we've got to approach this, is really engaging these employers on a one-on-one basis. And then finally, you know, how do we measure success? It's getting people into jobs, placing people. And once you've been successful with a sector strategy, so for example, instead of trying to go out and get 20 employers, go and get 2 or 3 and test the model. Can you make placements? Can you train people through the community college, technical college system, get them quickly trained and placed into a job? And if you can prove that model, then bring it to scale, then add more employers. But don't start out saying, okay, we're going to have this big advisory meeting, we're going to bring all these employers to the table, and we're going to have these big grandiose visions, and then you fall flat. Because all that does, again, you guys, is it just reinforces that negative mindset by employers about the workforce sector. And I'll tell you, right now, businesses, industry, they are desperately in need of workers, and they are now starting to listen to workforce development and realize the benefit of workforce development and the community college system. But you guys got to get smarter. You got to get wise about how do we engage employers and do it their way. We've got to understand, how does the employer want us to solve this problem? Not how we are going to solve this problem, not as you or this grant, you know, or this great government program, but how is the employer going to solve this problem? Figure out how to deliver that solution to them, and then we're going to have much more success. So, hey guys, thanks for watching this video, and there'll be more to come. Hope you have a great day.